How do you like this music behind us right now, huh?
Well, I like music of almost any kind, including this.
For the left and loud, it's Unpopular Front, the podcast. I'm Ben Yudishin. Welcome, everybody. Got another good conversation episode with Benny. We talk about a little kerfuffle that happened with Bernie Sanders. And, kind of getting ready for the 2020 primary if that happens. But we decided to not focus so much on the actual kerfuffle, but sort of about how should we handle these kinds of things? Because like a common thing we've talked about, and I've talked about for a long time, is how in a lot of places it can kind of feel like conflict is what we're against, right? We don't want to have conflict within our groups, We don't want to have liberals and leftists fighting because we got to take on the right, But what I'm realizing is, especially at times like this, conflict, as long as we're not like out to kill each other and like respect each other emotionally, is not just good, it's vital. And we talk about how you deal with that. And maybe when you do make that conflict and when you do start to do that and when maybe you got to find the right person to talk to about this, Maybe you don't engage that person who seems like they're really feeling a lot of feelings right now, Maybe respect people a little bit more. Oh, God, that's so corny, but it's true. Sorry. But before we go on to the conversation, I wanted to talk about something that is very near and dear to my heart because it's consuming everything around me. And that is Amazon. Yes, they come up a lot here. If you don't know, I'm based in Seattle, Washington. I've lived here for about almost 9 years. And I have sort of seen this city change. Amazon's been here, forever. It started here. But over that time period, there has been a lot of growth and sort of like capital infusions going into hiring new people, which is, causing this real estate explosion. And it was heralded at the time as like an undeniable good, that this growth is it's going to bring more jobs. It's going to bring more good things, and it's going to bring different kinds of jobs. It's not just going to be Amazon jobs. And maybe peripherally that's true. I don't work for Amazon. Maybe theoretically some kid that I worked with at a preschool situations, parents work for Amazon. But it's really important, I think, for those of us on the left and those of us who are critical of any inequality of all sorts, social inequality, material inequality, all these different things, that we don't just accept growth as a positive end unto itself. Seattle, I think, has proven this in Amazon's relationship to the city. There's a lot of big tech companies that are from here. Microsoft is from here. They're a huge tech company. We have even non-tech companies like Boeing that employ tons of people and make tons of plane parts and weapons. But, a lot of these companies, they operated under a model when it came to where they were going to have their headquarters and their factories. They operated under a model where they would build a campus or a factory in the suburbs. They kind of would, buy out like a huge section of like a place like Redmond or a place like Everett. And it was interesting to me that when Amazon really started to expand their campus, so much of it was focused in the downtown area and areas really near downtown. Because in a lot of ways, that's really inefficient use of their money, right? Like if they wanted to have a ton of space so they could keep their costs down, they would just like buy the city of Bellevue. I don't know. That's a bad example, but they chose not to. And they chose to just sort of expand and just sort of buy out like a whole neighborhood of the city pretty much. You know, it was a area that was not abandoned, but just sort of was not, it was very different than how it is now. You know, and they have been building buildings there for years. And what I realized with this is that, and with, especially, it's really been proven to me with their choice of Virginia, and especially their choice of Long Island City for their new headquarters, that just like their relationship to the city of Seattle, Amazon is looking to find an already established city, an already established economy, and to just kind of slide in and just sort of absorb all these social goods, the social wealth that we have in a place like Seattle, where there's, you know, there's a lot of culture. And, you know, I still think the mass transit here sucks, but, you know, but like there's a little bit of that. And there's, you know, it's a developed city. And it's a sort of a colonial aspect to it almost, where they are coming to a sort of already established system or an already established place. And they're looking to just kind of soak up all the value from all around, like little capitalist sponges, you know, just, and it's like a colonial act, you know. It's not them choosing these places because they like really want to contribute to the community. And not to say that like when other places, you know, when other companies choose to not, you know, like, but when they choose to do this, they're valuing their ability to suck up all these sort of immaterial social wealth that is all around us in these communities that we are making, that the people who live there are making, that Benny's making. It's they're moving really close to him. So we're both going to be really close by. And I just want us to remember that not all growth is good. Not all growth is created equal. And we make this wealth. So when a place like New York hands out $1.7 billion to Amazon, one of the most wealthy companies in the world, maybe one of the highest revenues, especially for tech companies, and we give them money, you know, the commons, the government, our tax dollars, our city, beyond just the tax dollars, all these things that we're giving to them. I just don't think that they deserve it. I just don't think that this is okay. I don't think that we should have to do this. I don't think that Amazon needs to go into an already crowded market in a place like New York. It's because they want to. It's because they want to expand this. And the fact is, they're so big and they have so much money, they can do it. There's really nothing we can do except break them up. We have to break up these large firms. I realize that there are maybe some socialists who think that talking about monopolies is not really doing enough to destroy capitalism. But we're not going to be able to create any sort of a real socialist economy that's based off of the will of workers if we have these large, just giant monoliths of cash that just can just absorb and control everything. And that's what we're dealing with right now. So I think we got to be serious, and we got to pressure our candidates and pressure movements to, talk about the size of these companies and put them in perspective and be willing to support candidates who want to use the antitrust law to actually fight this stuff. There's a tradition in America of this kind of progressive politics. We don't even have to go to Soviet Russia like so many leftists love to do. It's here. It's right here. It is in our history. And we should take that. And we should use that. We should break up Amazon. All right, here is my conversation with Benny. Love it. Anyways, hi, Benny. How are you?
Pretty good.
You having a good weekend?
Yeah, pretty good so far. A little bit of sunny weather.
Oh.
Stayed offline just enough that I didn't feel like another weekend was consisted of fighting online.
Yeah, or just or
resisting the urge to fight online?
Yeah, watching other people fight online and wanting to get in there, but then you realize we're all just going to be grosser and dirtier in the end. If you fight too much online, you get covered in the muck, and sometimes it's just not worth getting covered in the muck. That's what I'm learning. It might mean we'll have less Twitter followers. That's probably true, actually. I think the more you fight, the more shit you get, but it's I just don't know if that's good for the movement or mental health, which are probably should be pretty important.
Yeah, it's at best. There's a weird thing where I think people trick themselves that they're like, you know what, this is bad for my mental health, but it must be good for the movement. It's no, it's probably a net zero for the movement, whatever movement that is, and a net negative for your mental health. Right. So that's the default assumption that I think one should make, rather than this, because I'm saying the right things, it must be good for the movement.
Right.
Probably, but then the other extreme is, if I contradict people online, it's bad for the movement, which leads to the converse of, no, that's bullshit. I need to fight. No. You're not helping the movement. You're not hurting the movement. You're doing a net zero. But you're driving yourself crazy.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think some people probably get a little too focused on self-care, but this is not self-care. This is healthy self-management.
Exactly.
You're not really doing anything. You're just realizing maybe I'm not gonna get into a fight where we're all basically arguing over terms that mean different things to different people. So instead, I'm just gonna log off. It's nice to log off. I'm actually scared about that because Christy's out of town for 2.5 days. And I just know I'm just going to get absorbed. So I have to stock up on music documentaries. I've been watching so many music documentaries. I had the day off on Friday and I watched Noisy, which is Vice, which is probably bad. But I don't know. I don't really consume a lot of music press anymore. I used to all the time. There was a period of there was a period of time where I was sure I was gonna write for Spin or Pitchfork. I was that's just gonna be what happens. And I wrote record reviews in my high school newspaper.
No, that's cool. I used to. That's a lot cooler than my similar situation, which was that I thought that writing really good at writing Amazon reviews was gonna prepare me for writing music journalism,
right?
And without realizing that your review will get voted down if it's just a lot of hyperbole about how interesting the album is.
Right, exactly.
So my reviews just got voted down. I write, this album's like a desert sky. Downvote, downvote.
Yeah.
helpful as a consumer guide.
You write like a 5,000 word essay about like how some like, you know, mid-period Radiohead album is about, I don't know, something. But yeah, no, that is true. I think I kind of did that a little bit too. There was a period of time, probably in like peak music nerd time, which is right before the comedy nerd time, and all this. There was also the politics nerd time. Oh, I hate it. I just don't know what other term to use for that, honestly. But
yeah, it's tough to come up with a better term than nerd.
I know, because I kind of hate like nerds, but you know, that's what it is. But like I
want to step out the nerd thing. Like one of my friends put it really well in this one joke he made. Why like the term nerd is like so annoying is like somebody said like in a Facebook thread, somebody was like, "Oh my god, I just watched all of Game of Thrones in one day, so nerdy." And then my friend was like, "Oh my god, I just like my friend stopped up calling me to hang out because I kept on just going to work on my video game that I'm making that I'm really obsessed with because I'm really obsessed with projects and I get really really specific interests. So, oh my god, so nerdy." It's like,
that's just like being a human and an adult, where like you only have a limited amount of time, so you use your time in a efficient way.
Yeah, and that thing of like, it's like both of those things are silly. Like the proud, oh my god, I watched this thing that as a signifier is culturally nerdy, or just being like, oh my god, I got obsessed over one thing because I'm like trying to focus on what I'm doing with my life. So nerdy. It's like, you know, everything is nerdy when you're an adult. Like, just
right.
And so as a result, they only, even though we still use it, like when you really think about it, the only real significance of the descriptor nerd as an adult is this weird ass cultural identity, which has now become this bizarre, centrist, detached thing.
I mean, there is like a big centrist element, I guess. That is kind of true. I mean, you know, it's interesting. I kind of had thought about, I mean, we can touch on this because, like, you know, there was that like big, like, you know, nerd cultural reaction moment, I guess, in like 2013, 2014 with like Gamergate, and now there's like everything gate. There's like comics gate. I'm sure there's board game gate. You know, there's like all these different little like reactionary social groups that are like for just like projecting their like actual politics into their hobby because it's like the only way they know how to relate to people.
Yeah, that's true. I never realized that's exactly what it is. It's no more complicated than that.
Right.
Holy shit.
Right, because like that's why, like, you know, just addressing it like in a video game is not the same as like, you know, like it's like a second order, you know, it's the projection of what's actually happening in our own lives. Like, why do these people feel so threatened by like a gay character in a video game? It's not because like they love video games, you know, it has nothing to do because it doesn't affect the actual game. It's like it's a projection of their actual lives, and they're just sort of putting it into their hobby. Nerd culture's weird.
And then there's the reaction to the reaction is also, I guess, in a way, and then I'm wondering if you agree with this. Now that I'm thinking about it, with your sort of summary of it, is that maybe the reaction to the reaction of actually let's reclaim nerd culture for liberal social views is kind of the same thing of like, let me work out my entire relationship to the world, aka my entire relationship to power structures of the world, aka politics. Let me try to work this entire thing out in a battle over video games.
Right, but not bringing in the idea that like these people who have these thoughts in this, like they only look at them in their relationship to the video game culture. You know? Or at least they did. I feel like some people have kind of gotten better at that, I guess. But like for a long
some people's entry point. I guess that's do you think you could say that maybe like it's everyone's entry point, and that in a lot of ways it's a dead end, but it can be an entry point both for better and worse. Like maybe it's an entry point for ultra reactionary people who want to do real reactionary politics, and maybe it's an entry point for people who might later sincerely get into a more nuanced look at social justice, right?
Right. Yeah, it can go both ways for sure. It's a weird thing, you know, like I know there's like just a ton, it's like it just seems to always come up with like nerd shit, and then like I don't know, like for me, that was actually kind of like that coincided with when I kind of stopped caring about like video game culture or nerd culture. Like, and it was not like, it was partially, like mainly because like, I obviously would be more on the sort of, I guess, if it's like a liberal versus conservative thing, I'm more on the liberal side. Although I feel like they're sort of they were kind of focusing on the wrong things. Like there's a very kind of school of like video game journalism, but I think that's probably pretty common in other like entertainment journalisms, and like music journalism, film writing, where they are just trying to kind of like they're so immersed in the culture that things seem like a bigger deal, and they like actually seem worthwhile when they're really not. But like they are just so siloed in some ways, but I feel like maybe that's kind of changed. I don't know. Maybe it's just I've gotten older, but like...
Tell me if you detect this. Like, one thing that I think I detect sometimes in gaming journalism, movie journalism, I guess music journalism too, is that sometimes I feel like I sense this real fear that whenever they see a major political media topic, I'm just calling it a media topic because that's their exposure to it. Wow, it seems like everybody is talking about this instead of movies right now.
Right.
And then they get this fear. What if what I'm talking about is not relevant because I'm talking shit? Maybe I need to find the most perfect opinion for movie fans on this. And then so they like some of maybe bite off more they could chew to try to prove that they can stay relevant as entertainment writers, Right. I just feel like that goes on a lot because I feel like I sense this real anxiety where they whereas they'll have this very like balanced way of talking about movies, and then suddenly with politics, like this is not okay, bad.
Yeah.
In a way where it's like, this is not your area of expertise, yet you're more passionate about this seemingly than you are about your actual area of expertise. Because I think they're afraid,
Right, like they kind of need to prove that they need to prove that they're probably stupid the thing that they write about not really mattering too much in like the grand sweep of history. They have to deal with that by trying to make it seem either, like maybe to attach itself to like a big story. I mean, there was a time period, even kind of before the whole Gamergate period, where there was like this style of writing about games, and it's very much similar to sort of like, I think of like a website like Grandland, right? Like they described, or like if you want to go with games, I guess you say like a website like Kotaku or maybe Polygon. Where, which are like Gawker and Vox brands. I mean, they're basically sort of the equivalent of that. And they kind of have a similar style, and similar to a website like Grantland, which would like write like these crazy, like, 10,000 word essays about how like Mad Men is like a metaphor for like the Cuban Missile Crisis or some shit,
Yeah.
Like that kind of stuff. And it's like a way, I can't tell, because some of the times I feel like it's like people, like I think what some people think that they're doing is they think that what they're saying is like, I'm going to get these people who are here for the entertainment stuff to now care about politics. But what I think it does is sometimes it just kind of cheapens like the actual thing. And that's like a trend, to like sort of make it a little bit more artistic. Maybe they think it's like artistic, but it's really just kind of wordy. It's almost like a triangulation thing they're trying to do. Like, it much like all triangulations, I think it works to an extent. Like when I look back at that era and like, how Mad Men is really about the Cuban Missile Crisis is like a good summary of what that type of stuff would be, or exactly
how Parks and Recreation is actually about the civil rights movement.
Yeah, exactly.
God, that was a real thing, and I got very used to that. And I think I kind of got into that. I was like,
me
wow.
too.
This is reading about politics and entertainment. My entertainment is politics, too. This is cool.
And, like, some of those people are pretty good writers. So, like, that's another thing that'll get you hooked in.
Yeah. An interesting thing now is I feel like there's because that's such a genre, now you kind of will see a thing where people will write almost like, it's like a postmodern stage of that genre,
Yes.
where people will come up with like really out there metaphors that obviously aren't intended to be real.
Right.
But you know what? Like, they actually work in a way.
Yeah.
And like, but it's like postmodern in the sense that like you don't take it that seriously. Like, yo, that was a
Exactly.
clever connection that person made. I respect that.
Yeah. Well, with that, that is like explicitly more of maybe not art. Like that's like an entertainment. It's almost like like a satire or a joke almost. You know, like that's definitely a thing you'll see in like the YouTube world of like plot theories and parallels, and you know, like if you just like type in like theories Game of Thrones into YouTube.
Oh yeah.
Or just honestly like any like major series, like even like non-genre series, they'll seem to have that kind of shit. So like, you know, that's fun in a way. Yeah, that's not as self-important and is And, you know, I kind of find myself probably leaning more towards that than I do, like, people who are, like, trying to be really serious about, like, finding some, like, truth about the human condition through this insane metaphor, Grantland style.
Yeah, because you know what? There's a thing with the more fun type that we're talking about. It's not really trying to do triangulation.
No.
It's just like, what if this is true? Wouldn't that be entertaining? Whereas, like, the Grantland type of thing you're talking about that's serious triangulation. Like, let's triangulate politics writing. And with all triangulation, the thing is, people regress to the mean. Eventually, I was like, wait, if I want to read about politics, I'm going to read about politics.
Yeah, and if I want to read a movie review, I'm going to read a movie review.
Yeah, and I was like, wait a minute, movie reviews are inherently semi-political anyway. Like, this shit's always there anyway. There's always ideology somewhere. I don't have to read these people like reaching to try to triangulate the whole thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
But yeah, do you know what I mean? How it fits the triangulation thing of like how you always get sucked into it, but then you regress to the mean and realize, I can get the whole thing.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, it kind of sounds like we went through our own like third way period.
Yeah,
in the late 2000s.
Exactly. We know what shitty Reagan voting boomers went through the 80s and 90s, and then voting for Trump afterward. Like,
yeah, they're basically like, yeah, I just want a video game review, which tells me the graphics are off the chain.
Yeah. Yeah,
it's
they're
so
like,
lifelike.
Yeah. Or whether like the funny thing about video games is like I'm glad I never got involved in the culture because.
I'm glad for you.
Yeah, my relationship with video games, the rare times that I play them, has been just like, I want to read, does the game successfully hold this reviewer's attention? And then maybe I'll be curious about it. I want to see some graphics from it. I want to hear, like, you know, do you feel like you're playing a game, or do you feel like you're playing the same game 10 times while you're playing it?
Right.
That's all. But yeah, so a thing we were talking about earlier off the show was the way that people often react to stuff that seems like overly sensitive or overly calling out. And we were talking about it in a context of like people who get defensive of Bernie against people who are maybe overzealous and calling him racially insensitive or something.
Right.
But a good way to like. Like this is tactics advice, not even about being good politics. And I think one way to like explore is like imagine you're a Gamergate dude, whatever the hell those dudes are. I never met one. I don't know if they're even.
Yeah, I've never actually met one myself.
I
They're
don't know
only online.
I don't even know if it's possible for them to say words like in person.
Yeah.
If they just literally only ever type shit. But I would imagine if I were to meet one of these dudes, the best thing you could devise them to do as a tactic is be like, listen, dude, these people in the so-called social justice gaming world who you hate, their games are not as popular as the games you like.
Right.
They're not gonna defeat you, dude. So just chill the fuck out. Like,
right.
You're gonna, if any, at most you're going to accomplish nothing. At worst, you're going to be doing really bad shit if you try to defend your gaming culture against them. Right. So if you really care about preserving your precious games, just say nothing. Right. Do nothing. Try your best to ignore these people who you think are making unreasonable arguments.
Right.
And I think that's. Well, I mean, we could get into this a little bit more about when does something go from being like, all right, these are people who I think are wrong, but they don't have enough power to be worth defending against,
right?
To be attacking. When does that move into oh, these people are dangerous? And then if these so-called misguided call-out people, if they do become powerful, is it even good to correct them online?
Right. Yeah, I feel like it's correct to call them out online. It's pretty much always correct to call them out online if that's your brand and you can make money off of it, right? So that is probably the most important part of it, to understand when people choose to do that. And even making money off of it actually isn't that important. It's just if it's your brand, if you have a role you're supposed to fit into. A lot of the times, we sort of have these roles that we play in these online worlds, and if you're really focused on that is your brand, it sort of becomes who you are, and then you have to. But honestly, most of the time it's not. I mean, especially if it's dealing with something where something very serious like race or gender or sexuality or wealth or working, the big stuff we're supposed to care about and that we do care about. Most of the time it's probably not, especially if it seems like the person is having a more emotive reaction than they are a prescriptive reaction, right?
Right.
If they're having a very emotive reaction, we were both talking about this because there was this quote in an interview that Bernie Sanders gave, which kind of sounded weird because he basically said that people who were voting based off of racist appeals to them or racist ideas that they have were not themselves racist. And the question...
Right. Now, one thing I want to ask about that, because I forget exactly what it was. Did he say it only in reference to people in the South who didn't vote for Gillum or Abrams? Was that the context?
Yeah, the context is talking about... People... Yeah. He was, and he it was kind of like he was trying to find a polite way to say that there are a lot of fucking racists in the South, white, anti-black racism in the South, but he didn't want to just say that. But then, it's still caught because, it's true. I just said it. I think that's pretty true. But I think it's important, though, in this... kind of similarly to how if we especially white guys, that's what we are, if we're white guys and then we maybe see someone who's not a white guy or is even another white person, but they're having a reaction about something which maybe just because of our own experience, blah blah blah, if we are going to for us, I think, to be healthy and do well online and organize in the ways that we can, don't get angry at those people if they seem if they seem really angry and then they get but it seems very emotive, right? So I think what we need to do is kind
you
of
gotta detect, you gotta ask yourself, does this seem emotional or does it seem tactical?
Right, and if they're not talking about it in a tactical way, and I know I fucked up in this, where I came at someone as though they were talking tactical, but they were talking completely emotional. And I am very in favor of people being in touch with their emotions. Sometimes I think doing it online might not be the best place, but that might be a symptom of just how isolated we all are in our own worlds, and both of us are lucky enough to have families and relationships to go to, and some people just don't have that. But I think,
and I want to just add to that, this is something. I think the thing about people being emotional online, I think I wish that people who had argued with me at times when I was being very emotional online had thought of that too, you know?
Exactly.
Like, there were times when I had a rough time, I'd be like, this really fucking sucks for me because I feel like I'm never going to get health care. And it's like,
right, yeah.
like, well, you white male, it's like, yo, it's obviously a fucking emotional, isolating guy posting about this shit right now. Like,
exactly.
Anyone who had thought for 2 seconds could have realized that. And so...
just kind of let him be. You know,
Yeah.
just you don't need to like fix him or fix her or them, whatever. Like you just, you know, and like it's really tempting, right? Especially if you think someone is saying something that is especially if it's like within your own sort of faction and they're saying things that you feel like could maybe sort of be used to hurt the faction later.
That's where I was thinking too, is like, there's a thing where when somebody has branded themselves, I don't want to, branded or like established themselves as like somebody who's a political expert of sorts, and they themselves will tie everything they say to the movement, or I'm concerned about the movement, and so it's easy to like get something that if you like read it back 2 times, you'd realize, all right, they're saying this is about the movement, but it's clearly an emotional reaction they're having. Sometimes you could just tell that by reading something back, but instead we're like, well, actually, I think you're wrong about the movement, when it's like, they're not actually talking about the movement.
Right. Yeah. Like you just just think about it. Like realize like that people can also say that, and they're kind of just, again, just people project so much shit on like with media and culture. And I think in a lot of the ways that we experience politics is media and a culture anyways. So like they're just projecting their own personal feelings into that too. And like accepting that that's going to happen. And like realizing though that like that in and of itself is a thing that pretty much everyone does, and being okay with that and not being like scared of it.
Yes, yeah. You got to recognize that you do it. Recognize that it's okay that you, even if it's embarrassing, that you do that online. It's okay. Yeah. Everybody does it, and recognize when other people are doing it. And
but doesn't it feel so good to own people online?
The only people who I really like to own online anymore are like David Frum.
Yeah.
Some guys, when you find some
David Brooks, basically Brooks. Any like right of center like Jewish guy who writes for a big publication, I feel very comfortable attacking that.
No, when you find somebody, it is mostly men for sure, for sure. But it's especially like it's when you find somebody who feels entitled to not be bothered online and feels entitled to just watch the likes roll in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And who has spent a lot of their life just not being attacked for anything.
Yeah,
not being called out for anything, and feeling like
such a comfortable life.
Yeah, they can incite a war across the globe and then go back to their home and be like, I'm not going to get any bad feedback for this. Those people still you should own online. But when you look at somebody who has 10,000 followers who, I don't know. I think it's good that we're not naming anybody. Do you agree?
Oh, yeah, I don't really
we're obviously thinking of very specific people, but there's no point naming these people. But like, there's a lot of people.
There's so many of these people. Everyone knows at least one of these people. You know?
And like, so one thing that I feel like if someone picks up this, a lot of people might think this is a somewhat controversial thing to say, but I'm saying this in a positive way of just like, don't get mad at these people is what I'm trying to say. Don't get mad when someone's obviously having this reaction. Is like when you see somebody who's saying something along the lines of, Bernie is killing the movement by not calling out racism.
And it's really not even calling out racism because in this context, because like he didn't call people racists, but whatever. Which is kind of a different thing.
Without racists, that whole weird thing.
That's a tough conversation, but I think there's a lot of nuance in that. I guess is what I worry about.
Right, yeah. But it's like it's the way I think that when you're, let's say if you're somebody who's either white and looks at doesn't, and race isn't your main angle, or you're somebody who's for lack of a better way to say it, like a socialist anti-racist who is going to be bothered by this focusing on calling out Bernie as well. Whether you're one of those, from one of those perspectives, your for lack of a better way to say it, your purely logical reaction is going to be something like, okay, well, Hillary called people deplorables and she lost the election, so why should Bernie call everybody racist and also alienate them like it did the first time? We're going to logically think that. But the thing that I keep in mind is, like, when people are sort of obviously having an emotional reaction to it and trying to say this is bad for the movement, et cetera, even though I think technically that's wrong, technically this might be good, because he's going to avoid alienating the millions of white people who would have to vote for him.
Like, it's a shitty pill we have to swallow, right? That's what we're really dealing with, right?
But nonetheless, I'm not going to say that to the person, because they're obviously not reacting well to it. Maybe they're technically wrong when they say this hurts the movement, when actually maybe, if anything, it helps for him to coddle racists a little bit. But don't say that. It's obviously an emotional reaction. Let them be.
Right.
And
also, just so, like, we can clarify, because this is a tough topic, but, like, it's not even so much coddling racist. I think it's like, it's a tough one, right? Because so much of the expectations and the, like, media environment that politicians on a national level are at, like, we in our part of the left, from sort of your dirtbag left, just like total Chapo head, like almost like a Chapo chud, like those people exist. I still like Chapo, but like those people exist. But they just like are just really kind of stupid and just need to, like, they need to listen to this honestly and calm down a little bit. That's kind of what I want. But from the opposite, like, you're like anarchist folks, whatever, who are like super, I don't know. There's so many different people on left, but so much of it is like, we're very anti-civility right now, right?
Right.
But
knee jerk. We almost get knee jerked.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and I honestly think this is a very similar moment as to when John McCain died, and AOC and Bernie both made, like, they both had like tweets that were like basically not like saying, "Hey, John McCain, fuck you. I hope you're like dying, like you die all over again in hell. You fucking baby murderer, bad pilot guy. Oh, and your daughter sucks too." Like, they don't want that, right? Like, or like, that's not what they're gonna say, because they're in like a different level. And as much as we hate the civility, and as much as we want to be like, this shit shouldn't matter, because a lot of it shouldn't, but they are still operating in this dynamic. Our goal is to change it, right? Like, not to quote Marx literally, but like, our goal is to change that. It doesn't mean that we're there yet, though. And balancing that is hard, because I want it to be this way now, but we have to figure out how we do it, and that's what we're doing. We're not there yet.
And tell me, I'm going to make a broad statement. I wonder if you agree with this, but that basically, at least in terms of like culture and this discourse, like, and winning, getting people to be down with a group of political policies, incrementalism is a real thing.
Yes.
And Clintonism, third wayism really ruined it. They made people think that incrementalism doesn't actually exist.
Right.
When in reality, it's like they were just not actually incrementalists. They were just sort of people who had put Band-Aids on stuff, and then they could easily be repealed. Right. That's really the trouble with like the New Democrats. Yeah. But incrementalism, in the sense of, maybe the way to get less people like John McCain in government, maybe an increment toward that is to just say, rest in peace, John McCain, and then privately try to work against politicians like him forever. Maybe that's an incrementalist thing, rather than being like, fuck John McCain and his stupid ass family,
Right.
Which is what
totally. Exactly. No, like I'm actually thinking right now of I have an aunt who my sister recently got married, and we had a party, and I think it was at one of the we had you know how like with a lot of weddings, you know, there's like the day before party. There was like we had like a day after party too, because it's like I have a lot of family from all over the country. So this was at the day after party. And it was like the day of John McCain's funeral, and she because she knows like I've always been like the guy that's the like kid that's into politics, right? So she like came up to me and she was like, "Yeah, just watched Barack's speech. Damn, I miss him. You know, good. He did a good one for John McCain. You know, so like she's the kind of person who actually the left could maybe get to vote for left candidates. I don't think she's going to be a member of DSA, you know, but like she loves Barack Obama. She's like she's like a total Texas liberal, you know, like her son, like and daughter, you know, they're like my closest cousins, and like they were like super into Beto O'Rourke, you know, like all this stuff. And you know what? I think for some of those people, if like Bernie Sanders came out and said, "Fuck John McCain," I hope he's like fucking rotten in hell. Like, you know, like I think that would maybe make them less likely to go to that movement. Yeah. You know? Now, the difference though with this in some way though is that I actually think the John McCain one is a lot more clear cut. Like in some ways, you know?
Yeah,
like,
that's a good point. Right. It's a good example of ways of being civil, but it's
because like there definitely is a moment where with voters, like you do want to say, yeah, those are just fucking racist. But I just don't know like when a politician like that says that. Just like politicians just don't really say that. I mean, so like we're kind of wanting him to break the mold, which is cool. But we shouldn't get this frustrated when he doesn't break the mold. Because there's going to be a lot of chances for him to break the mold, and any politician to break the mold when they're not going to break.
Yeah, right. It's like, it's a lot of time when people talk about being too online, it's used in a completely derogatory way, like everyone online sucks and you're getting all your ideas from people who suck online. I think in this case, like one thing that I can observe going on with myself from versus when I was online more versus online less is like there are people online who have a lot of followers and do a lot of critiques of public figures and get a lot of retweets for it, saying something like, if Bernie won't call out racism, black people will never vote for him and he'll never win, saying that or implying that. And
which is, again, even that phrasing is kind of is challenging, but I'm not. I'm not going to say that to that person online. Like that's the point I'm trying to be. It's like, you know what? I feel like there's something a little uneasy there, but you know what? I'm just going to breathe.
Oh yeah, and it's like I realize like that's me reading into what they say. Exactly. They won't exactly say that. They'll say something like, "I'm just concerned about this. This is betraying supporters. You got to watch out. They could be moved. They could just become liberals or something."
Right.
The thing is, that applies to a group of I'll just call them activists to be very broad. That definitely, I think, applies to a group of activists, and the jury is out on whether they are enough people to swing an election. Right. I'm going to go and be inclined toward no, like most of the people who need to be won over are people of color who, as we observed in the last election, Clinton couldn't convince them that it was worth voting at all in a way that Obama or Bill Clinton did.
Yeah,
which is a key thing. Like that's a bigger deal. Like they from any of the polls and interviews that I've seen with people who didn't vote at all. They didn't say Clinton didn't have an idea for ending racism because, let's be honest, Obama didn't either.
Right.
He didn't promise. He said, "I welcome all racists into my fold."
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
If you're racist,
absolutely.
Like that was, and they still voted for him. So it's like, that's one side of it. And then also there's the matter of the hard fact that even a Keeanga Yamada Taylor says, which is that like white people are still the majority in this country.
Right.
And sadly, that means that you have to worry about, for the purpose of branding, elections, and things like that.
And building power. And
it means that, like, you can't count on, there are I'm gonna say it in a more crude way. Just that, like, I don't have any attachment to, like, racist, dumbass white people I know. Like, oh, I don't want them to be left behind. I know people like that, and I don't have an attachment of, oh, I feel bad that they feel left out of this country. Yeah. I wish that every white person was fucking woke, but there are so many white people, and most of them are not woke, and we don't even have the power as dudes who could, as dudes, contrary to popular belief, as dudes who are relatively on the woke side of things, relatively aware of our place in society and injustice, we don't have the power to turn every white dude to even be like us.
Right.
And so in the end, it kind of seems like, you know, the people you got to win over, just taking it back to like the idea of the strategy, seems like the swing people you got to win over are people of color who understandably it's hard to get them to vote. Because it's hard to vote because they're getting the designed to make it hard for them to vote, and they don't get returns on voting. So got to convince them really hard. And then white people who are extremely weirdly self-conscious about being called racist, even though they are, who might be able to be convinced to vote for someone based on their material interests. It seems like there's a lot of them. And the particular educated liberals who need Bernie to call out racism harder, I'd have to be convinced that there are enough of them to swing an election.
And that the cost benefit is worth it. Basically. Yeah. I guess is that just mean? Is it like another way of saying like we have to think strategically when we are dealing with like singular politicians' behaviors because they're like a symbol of like a machine?
You know, maybe.
You know, because it seems like this always comes up with politicians specifics or like people with any amount of power. You know, like sometimes it'll come up about like media people, but these tend to be about politicians, you know, because it's like there's so much just in this one singular person. But I don't know. It's a weird one. Yeah. And like I know we're gonna have a lot more because like the presidential election's gonna start, and that's all about like these single individuals. You know, like I actually feel like, you know, because the midterms are over now, and it pretty much, you know, it ended up how we wanted, maybe even better with some of these recounts. But in that, there was a little bit more of a macro. I kind of felt like we were all, you know, at least in the places that I get my media and just talking with people, I was hearing a lot more sort of structural, systemic critiques, less about like these individual people are doing this thing, unless it's talking about like the Trump administration. But that kind of makes sense because like our relationship to the presidency is so much more like it's easier to have like these individual people because they have so much power. It's easier to like actually care about those things, or at least make yourself think that you care about those things.
Yeah.
You know, like individuals' personal behavior or how they talk about something versus sort of what their ideology is.
You know, sometimes I feel like there's a weird sort of toxic type of validation from politicians that a lot of us got addicted to during the Obama era, perhaps.
Yeah.
A lot of people in their 20s through 30s got addicted to this idea that that you could actually reliably feel an attachment, feel a weird attachment to politics. I'm going to go back further and say that like the Clinton era meant that you had to either be one of the people who weirdly loved the Clintons, which I remember a few people, weirdly enough, like I remember in my high school, like among like the liberal people I went to high school with, there's only one person I remember who ever sincerely liked Bill Clinton.
Yeah.
Actually, no, two. They were both from the South. Like a white guy and a black guy who were from the South.
That makes sense. Yeah. I mean, he is like the ultimate good old boy, but he's like, totally. But the thing that I associated with the Clinton era, in at least in terms of like people who were Gen X and younger, and some honestly a lot of like more liberal and left wing boomers as well, was this idea of, you know, this guy actually fucking sucks. He's a sleazebag. He's the best we can do. We gotta have low expectations for him. Yeah. Well, there was so much like this sense of like just accepting Reaganism and just sort of accepting
Right.
how stuff was, and it was just, and we were all sort of still operating under some beliefs about like certain kinds of like economic policies, you know, like
Right. Yeah.
there was
that's a
also
big part.
like a much smaller range of possibility ideologically, both on the left and the right to a degree. Clinton's, yeah, but like people really want to see that validation from singular politicians versus sort of like accepting these things more as movements. And with that, it's much easier to sort of rough over the edges and find like the commonality, maybe, you know?
Yeah, and there was a thing where Obama's message was like, you don't have to like detach yourself from me like you did with a Bill Clinton. I'm pretty legit.
Yeah.
And what happened was with that was people from like center liberal to left, I think, got hooked on that, and then the split again who were addicted to that like feeling of oneness with Obama.
Yeah.
So I think in 2016 you had a split. Everybody was hooked on that sense of validation that they got from Obama and the culture. The wider culture, that sense that like this liberalism, this movement of social liberalism at least, which didn't necessarily have many like a value of intelligence and social liberalism, was like, and one people went the direction of, okay, well, we're going to transfer that to Hillary. And
Yeah.
what happened after that was that was most people, let's be honest.
Yeah.
Like, you can't pretend that wasn't most people. Most people who had that feeling of like a real attachment to the movement were like, all right, well, Hillary's the obvious logical next step here. But then with everybody else, there was a different split where actually maybe this whole thing of getting attached to one person was bad, and we should make politics be about more policy stuff.
Right. Exactly.
But then there was another group of people who were like, actually, let's transfer this like identification with a politician onto Bernie,
Right.
which is also bad.
Yeah, exactly. That doesn't work either, and that results in some weird like conspiracy shit too. Yeah, eventually, because then they like become so protective of Bernie, they start to believe like how the Seth Rich shit is connected to it in some way.
Oh God, yeah. They started believing Seth Rich, start to believe in, or rather, what's interesting is there actually was quite literally like a conspiracy, as in a lot of people collaborating to prevent him from getting too close to the nomination.
Yeah.
But we just accept that doesn't bother me. Like,
Yeah,
it's
it's
something that has to be relitigated all the time.
Right.
Like, we know they tried.
It's how power works. Like they're gonna try to protect their own like
Yeah, yeah.
Like, what do you expect that they're gonna do? What? Like, you don't think that this happens all the time in everything? That's sort of the thing that I find shocking. Like, yeah, like it's like when people are like, "Oh my God, America is corrupt." It's like, yeah,
right.
That's why we care about this.
Yeah. It's like, wait, you realize that if you accept a candidate whose like strongest message needs some sort of redesign, and to be like, wait a minute, America is currently designed to reward incumbents,
Right?
And to reward people who are already in power. This is an outrage. This is I can't believe this shit.
It's like, what am I gonna do about this? It's like work in politics. That's kind of what it is. Sorry. Sorry if it's like weird or like bummer to you, but that's kind of what we're all doing.
And as much as we just criticized, obviously, people who get really fixated on saying like, oh, I'm concerned about this one thing, this could sabotage him, when really what they're saying is, I fucking hate this and I want to rant about it, which I totally respect.
Oh yeah, that's fine.
I hate that Bernie's pandering to the wrong people.
Yeah, totally.
That sucks. I want to have, that's a good thing to rant about.
Right.
They'll like make that be, it's not that I'm pissed off at this, it's that it's a movement, and I'm just concerned about this.
Right.
Likewise, people who get that defensive of Bernie, just as bad.
Oh yeah, totally.
Just as much like, not, I shouldn't say just as bad, whatever. This is, like we said before, these are just reactions that we're going to have.
Right.
Politics gets emotional, but people like that are just as much in a realm of like, this has gotten away from the personal side of the spectrum.
Yeah, it's I feel like it's going to be more emotionally exhausting than maybe I thought it was going to be this upcoming political season. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of my impression right now. And, we'll get there. We'll deal with it. And, maybe it'll be it'll be like an actual struggle session, like we're all going to like really, like, we're going to self a crit, but it's not going to be sort of in that like shitty way, which is kind of just about like complaining about like how much like, like how you work so hard, like in a way where like, we're going to have to confront sort of dealing with people interpersonally versus how we are going to like build a movement, power and stuff. And that's going to be, maybe that'll be good.
Yeah.
Maybe that'll be healthy.
Yeah.
Therapy session for the left.
All right. So one thing that we've been talking about a little bit off the air that I think we're sort of getting to here is the interpersonal aspect of how we talk about this stuff.
Yeah.
The personal journey, the psychological aspect of it, which we're always going to come back to. As that, I think a strange thing that went on online in the recent years is a lot of dudes. I've definitely been one of these dudes. I think maybe you have been, maybe if not to a lesser extent, but like, so I'll just say like what position I was in. I was like a single dude, slightly bored and isolated, had a lot of opportunity to be online, like at my job and not at my job. And in addition to being online, just I was generally like very caught up in like the common thing, which was also a thing offline of people saying men need to listen to women more, listen to women, do all this listening, but also simultaneously saying men need to stop bothering women to educate them.
Right.
They need to talk about their feelings amongst themselves. A lot of people, including me, definitely went, unfortunately, more in the direction of, okay, so maybe you need to seek validation from women. Like, in a strange way, I think the message of listen to women, often gets easily translated to make sure your opinions are validated by women.
Right.
Which means you just seek out a woman who agrees with you.
Yeah, and to then give you to basically give you validation and power. It's vampiric, right?
It is vampiric, yeah, and like naturally nobody's down with it, and you do get reminded of the obvious reality that like all of this stuff sort of contradicts, but that your intuition will tell you if you trust that. Yeah, listen to women. Which women?
Right.
You listen to women and recognize you should listen to people. It's good to listen to people, but ultimately you will recognize that they disagree with each other, and none of this is going to totally validate you. And what I think. So I think like the real thing that needs to be done is neither the weird contradicting messages of men need to talk to each other or men need to just need to not stop listening to other men that contradict things.
Yeah.
The reality is like men we honestly do need to validate each other, and then we'll be in a safer base. Honestly, I think like a healthier place to. We need to discuss difficult topics with each other, even though we're gonna get just another man's perspective. But we need to like check in with each other and be like, yo, does this thing seem confusing to you too? Do you ever feel like you're overstepping your bounds in this movement? Like that's honestly, I think we need to talk to each other about that.
Yeah.
To remind each other that it's okay to feel strange, and then we'll be in a better place to take feedback from people who aren't men.
Yeah, exactly.
We need feedback from women and from women, people of color, etc. From the people who aren't white men. We need feedback from them, but we can't get. But if we're just told to not listen to each other, not work this out amongst each other, we're just going to seek validation from them. We need that from each other.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. And that's such like a beautiful, healthy way to do it too. It's like it's not. Yeah, totally. And I think it's kind of like, it's, I mean, God, you want to get real about it. So, men are supposed to talk about their feelings, but so much of this stuff is about sort of our emotional reaction to some of these new political and social ideas.
Right. It's not easy, and we need to do emotional labor of supporting it for each other.
Right.
As men.
Yes,
that emotional labor
exactly.
that otherwise, I mean, emotional labor, whatever. It's a strange word, but it's just the best phrase I can think of to describe it.
No, I actually think that's a pretty good term for it because I mean that's kind of what like being in a relationship is, you know?
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
So
yeah.
you know, and I think for a lot of like hetero couples, it's probably a very common pattern of men sort of just having their wife be the only person, or you know, girl, a friend, be the only person who they really deal in do any emotional labor with at all. So it like puts this burden onto the woman in some way.
Yeah,
and, you know,
and
for
also
some,
likewise, in the other direction, it's easy when you're in these nuclear couples that we get into. It's easy to think, all right, well, a lot of as a dude, my emotional labor goes into toward my partner, and it's easy to get in a thing where like your relationship to other genders that way, and like sometimes I noticed a weird thing that happens with me that I've like caught myself doing is I'll be less open almost with my male friends because it's like, and less open to that, less open to having serious emotional conversations with male friends.
Yeah.
So I'm like, well, I'm already having these serious conversations with my girlfriend.
Right.
That's where we're having the most emotional relationship with each other. But it's like, no, man, we got to still talk about feelings with each other as men. Also,
well, especially if there are things that kind of relate to being a man, you know, like that a lot of our, you know, cis women partners are going to have no idea about in some ways. And I think accepting that is good. You know, I think it's really good.
100%.
Yeah.
And they say the personal, political, really do align in important ways sometimes. Like, it's easy to get skeptical about that. Maybe they've oversold us the idea that relating to your partner can be political, but no, honestly, this is for real. This is real stuff.
Yeah, this is the real thing. This is like it's a men's liberation struggle session that we're having. So everyone get ready.
Get ready. We're about to start getting into archetypes.
Oh, yeah, God, yeah. This is going to go full Jordan Peterson. Oh, hunting. Yeah, hunting shit for sure. Yeah, I was because, again, I'm still on this ancient history kick. I was learning about the Scythians. I was learning about the Scythians. I didn't know anything about the Scythians.
Who are they?
The Scythians are the people who lived in the eastern steppe. So that's like Kazakhstan, just, you know, that like area of Eurasia where it's just grasslands and it's just, that's it. They were the people, they're basically, I think they're like, what I saw is they're like Iranian types of people. So they're like the people at the very further edge of that empire. We're going back to the Persians, huh? But they're the folks who lived there in that area and they would like raid and shit. Like, they were like the Turks and the Scythians and the Mongols and all that stuff. So I was learning about them because I only saw them in the Civilization games, going all the way back to the video game thing. So
do they have any interesting approaches to manhood?
Oh, you know, their approaches to manhood, it seems it's all about horses. They're like those people who are like always on horses. So it's sort of a symbiotic, nomadic relationship. So yeah, probably that like hunting thing, that raiding kind of thing. So I don't know. I don't know where they would lie politically. They're probably pretty far right. Yeah. They seem pretty authoritarian. Might makes right, you know?
Yeah. Good thing that nothing like ancient history really to like make you appreciate that men can afford to not identify with horses anymore.
Yeah, you know, that's true. Yeah, men and like women and horses, it's a very common stereotype with some communities. I'll just leave it at that. But, you know, but like, yeah, when men get really into horses, it becomes like cavalry to like raid a castle. Or even like cowboys, you know, or you know. I want to say I'm full on glad that like men have ceded horses to women. That's a sign of progress. Or a horse girl, the horse girl is such a better type of person than what's the worst? Yeah, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? I mean, obviously, if they wanted to, of course, they could become like, you know, modern day Scythians. It's not really what's happening. You know, you're not really seeing. It's not the same level.
It's not. It's so much better.
Yeah. Horse guys way worse than horse girls. Oh, I'm glad we talked about horse girls.
Oh yeah.
Christy loves talking about horse girls. She's an anti-horse girl, but this has been Unpopular Front, the podcast. Thanks for listening, everybody. You can find more episodes at unpopularfront.com. Subscribe, please subscribe. You can follow me on Twitter at Ben Udashin. That's BenUdashen. For the left and loud, it's Unpopular Front.